Welcome back to the Soul Deep Science Podcast. I'm your host, Trey Brock, joined as always by Dr. Dilsaver. How you doing, Doc?
I'm fine, thank you, Trey.
Today we're going to be going through the Institute of Psychomoralytics. We're going to be talking about something we've been working on for a pretty long time here. I've been studying with Dr. Dilsaver for about a year and a half, a little over a year and a half now, and our institute, the semester starts in a couple of weeks here, and so this podcast is promoting what we're doing. It's talking about what we're going to be studying, and we're going to get into what exactly the Institute of Psychomoralytics is. The first thing I wanted to talk about, Doc, is when you first envisioned the Institute, obviously you were one of few clinicians, one of few psychomoralists who's actually practicing psychomoralytics, and it's something that needs to be not just you or a couple other people, but it needs to be accessible to a lot of people because the mental health system is not cutting it for people who are looking for real help. I guess the first question is, what did you envision for the Institute when you first started thinking about all this?
The fact that psychomoralytics as a science is replicable, that is, individuals can learn it and practice it, and then bring their own talents to the process, is what makes it unique in the realm of, if you will, the Christian psychotherapy or alternative psychotherapy. Now, it's a science that is freestanding of the mental health system because it's based on different lineage, academic as well as clinical. Its basis is in Thomistic psychology, which gave way to experimental psychology at the turn of the 20th century, and that in turn gave way to clinical interventions in human psychopathology or behavior.
Yeah, and so I guess why is it so important today to be doing what we're doing? I myself, like I said, I've been studying with you for about a year and a half now. I'm at the tail end of my studies with psychomoralytics. I'm writing a thesis, slowly putting that together. I've been doing hours of supervision with you and therapists. And so the students that are coming in, we've got a good group right now. And for anybody who's looking into joining our group, joining the Institute of Psychomoralytics, there's a couple weeks left for you to join, and there's a couple of spots left. So we have a good group right now. Some of the books that we're reading, we're going through Imago Dei Psychotherapy, which Doc, you wrote, I think that was 15 years ago. And that's the book that I know that Kenneth Baker said was he sided with you over Conrad Bahr's and his analysis of that. Catholic University of America came out and said you're the father of Christian psychology because of that work. We're going to be going through Psychomoralytics, which you wrote a couple of years ago, and then we're also going to be going through Living the Truth right here. It's by Joseph Pieper. One question I wanted to ask you, Doc, is in your writings and in our curriculum, we go through a lot of Joseph Pieper. We're reading your stuff, but we go through a lot of Joseph Pieper. Why is that so important? Why is his work, why was that important to you, and why is that important for anybody studying Thomistic psychology, psychomoralytics? Why is that so important for us to go through?
Well, it's important to have that Thomistic basis. And Joseph Pieper was a German neo-scholastic philosopher last century. And his work, what I like particularly about Living the Truth is it bears down on what is the real, what is reality, what is it that we consider, if you will, sanity. That is when our minds conform to reality, when they are able to receive reality. And so the very need to ground any sort of human psychomoral, psychological intervention in reality and in truth is paramount. Now, the mental health system does not do that, and that's why it's so dangerous. But if you're going to ground any of this in truth, you need to, of course, know what truth is. And early on in both the Mugger psychotherapy and psychoanalytics, we talk about man as a seeker of truth. That's what makes the human person different than the other creatures, that he can assent to truth and love it as a good. So that's why he's in God's image, analogous being, sharing that sort of functionality. So that is his vocation. That is what it means to be human. So we want to help him flourish as a human. But we can't now. Mental health system, number one, doesn't even have that as a goal. But then it's all functionality or some sort of nebulous feeling, or at least why it's be alleviated of distress. That's their goal. However, in psychoanalytics or true human psychology, clinical psychology, we want that person to be able to fulfill their specific difference as a human person, which is to assent to truth and choose it as the good. Be free to do that. Have the courage to do that. And so that's the human person. That's their vocation. And that's why we go into the Thomistic understanding of what is truth, what is good. And Joseph Pieper explicates this very nicely in Living the Truth. And that basis being then, we say, well, what is the good? Well, that's what we desire with our wills. That's what we love and want to attain. But before we can want to attain it, we have to assent to the truth of it. So we assent to the truth of that good, and that's our intellectual assent to truth. And now that process is what the human being or the human act is all about. It's truly human act, a truly psychomoral act. And so that truth and goodness then is the actual volitional choice of the truth. And truth itself then is going to be that which, when our mind or intellect corresponds with objective reality. So then I hold the truth. I receive that truth and I correspond to the truth. Then I can hold the truth within my mind. And I also know that truth is something that then exists outside of my subjective desires, and regardless of if I like it or not. And so that's why we say that reality is humiliating. Of course it is, because the truth is I'm just a little wretched creature. It doesn't have to exist. And so that's a hard truth of creature existence. So the truth in itself is a manifestation of then what is the objective reality, what that is being. It's a manifestation of being. And in all being, all creation, everything in this realm, we know through our human intellects, this is all we can know, is that this order here has nothing within it that is self-creating. That is, this order does not have as essence existence. We know that. That's absurd. It couldn't have always existed. We know that. So people say, well, God can't always exist. It's absurd. No, God has to exist, because this realm, and we know about it, is absurd to think it always existed. So there has to be something totally other, beyond our comprehension, that whose essence is existence. I am. So that's a natural consequence. So that being then has to be a manifestation of that. But that being is creation. It's not him. It's not that. It's still creation. And so that's what we call analogous being. All things that God created would be share similar functionality to God, but not his nature. So even the smallest particle has analogous being to God because it exists. It has no soul as an eternal principle. It still exists. So therefore, it is God's analogous being. And then we, as the human person and as the angels, we share God's. we share the functionality, some of the functionality of God, of reason and volition. So that was me, certain functionality of God, manifestation of God, and that then being derived from supreme being, he whose essence is existence. So see, it all flows, it's all integrated. Now, if you miss a step there, if you don't have any of that ontology, if you don't have any of that teleology, ontology is the nature of being, if you don't have any understanding of teleology or where the human person is going, how are you possibly going to help a human person flourish in the humanity? You can't do it. It's a hit and miss thing if you do it. So you have to know where you're going. You have to have a roadmap, and that's what with Thomism. That's what my reads of Joseph Pieper helped out quite a bit, and we were able to then develop this psychomoralytic and really Thomistic topography of the soul, so we can actually see it as clinicians. We can see what's going on here, what the dynamics is in a mechanical model that obviously doesn't do service to the spiritual reality of it, but nonetheless allows us to see exactly what takes place in the psychomoralytic process and in the soul, and that's something that we were able to parse out of Thomism. And the neo-scholastics, neo-Thomists like Joseph Pieper. There's groups. So you have a paleo-Thomists, and those people that will go back and they want to kind of stay just with Thomas's works, and they cite Thomas quite a bit. And the neo-Thomists that want to develop this work. Well, but I think that really the spirit of Thomism is that it's always open to incorporating within it other truths. And it's what Antoine Gilson, the French philosopher, said that was Thomism is a super philosophy that it can embrace within it brings within its fold all those that are all that's true and good in other philosophies, and actually in doing so synergistically allows them to even bring out more truth. It all works together. So that's what Thomism does, and there's that real openness in that this instead of this kind of turn within this that sometimes we find. Funny thing is, some Thomists don't like people develop his works, but and they'll cite and they cite Thomas or whoever, any authority. That's one of the big things to do, and they'll cite Thomas. What Thomas says. Well, Thomas also says that cite authority is the weakest argument. So it's for Thomas again. What's the highest authority? Truth. Truth. That's the highest authority. So again, it goes right back to the whole concept of existence, the human vocation, everything else. So it's all one piece, and these concepts have nothing at all to do with the mental health system. Right now, you can talk to PhDs, MDs, whatever you want. You have no idea what I'm talking about. No idea. So
that's pretty scary.
That's the great dearth. Yeah, no philosophical understanding. And that's the need. Why this is psychomoralytics? There has to be an alternative to help free people, liberate people from a mental health system that's becoming increasingly coercive and increasingly enslaving, and increasingly, if it can become any more so, an armed agent of the deep state. And it's a deep state because you don't elect these officials. You don't elect any of these boards. None of these things are elected. They're all appointed. They're all under the rule and thumb of the pharmaceutical companies, the insurance companies, and the state. And so what we're offering is human freedom, human flourishing to a humanity that's increasingly enslaved by their own fears and manipulations, by the state, by the mass media, by all these powers and principalities, increasingly enslaved and increasingly debilitated. But psychomoralytics facilitates them gaining the courage to accept the truth and follow the good. And that is all, that choosing of the truth, that choosing of the good is what love is all about. And love is the engine that psychomoralytics seeks to draw on. and love as well, then will cast out those fears, the fear of humiliation, because the love drives you on, and that love of truth and the good is even stronger than your own fear of losing yourself, because you're really meant to ascend to truth. If you lose yourself, if you will, and ascend to truth and choosing the good, then you really find yourself. And you lose all those parts of you that impede the truth or hamper the good.
Something essential to psychomoralytics, really for the students going through these next 2 years, really hunkering down and studying all this, is the conversional process themselves. I know that when I first started with you, Doc, I was finishing up my master's in theology, and I know that a lot of people have been through a master's program where it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of writing. You might have a presentation here and there, but for the most part, it's a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a lot of memorizing. With psychomoralytics, something I found that was interesting and probably the most helpful thing and the most important thing is that you're not just studying this stuff, you're not just memorizing these terms, you're not just writing about it and talking about it, you're going through the conversional process yourself. You're going through psychomoralytics, making it your own. The students that we have coming in, the group that we have coming in, something we're doing in that first semester at least. There's a lot of reading. There's going to be a lot of writing. There's going to be some tests, and there's going to be some presentations and whatnot, some open dialogue. But they're going to be going through individually with you the psychomoralytic process. Why is that so important, Doc? That somebody who is training to be a psychomoralist, or somebody who is a psychomoralist, why is that so important that they go through that process themselves, and they're not just memorizing things, they're not just reading a bunch of stuff, but they're actually going through a conversional process themselves? Why is it so important? Why is that essential to our curriculum?
Right. Well, as I said, you have to walk the walk before you can talk the talk. That's what it should be. The psychomoralytic process is not an option for anybody. Now, formal therapy is, but as we mature through life, that's the psychomoralytic process. It's the acceptance of reality, whether we like it or not. There's the basic, really dying to self, resignation, maybe at least a resignation to the fact that life is maybe even disappointing or hard and bleak, but there's a certain maturation to that. And now, of course, if you're truly open to reality, to the truth and the good, you can see that life is not just all bleak, it's also light and joy. But again, that's why people are closed off as well, because maybe they're afraid of the bleakness, and so if you have the more joy you have, the more sorrow you have. And so that need to be able to be open fully to reality, and then not to fall into, again, that self-pity, where again you're falling, you're really fighting against that reality, you're not really maturing. The need to have that, a practitioner that has to see that it's not as if a therapist has it and the clinician doesn't. We all have it. We're all on the same continuum. Oftentimes, those you work with, even if they come to us in a relatively debilitated state of human flourishing, oftentimes because of the actual negative aspects of the symptomology and negative things that are going on in their souls, they can actually bring about superlative good that helps them, advances them along the way. And then we learn as clinicians as well. We're all through the process. It's all about us going through this continual openness to reality. So the need for that clinician then to do that and to continue to do that throughout his life, if you're not doing it with your therapist while you're with them, then you're really squandering the opportunity, and plus you're not really being able to enter into the process either as deep as you should. But we're all in this together. And if with psychomoralytics being this this tool to allow people to live life courageously. Well, it's also that tool to help our clinicians live life courageously. And a psychomoralist is going to be someone who's going to lead the way, help people uh, escape the mental health system. The flesh pots of Egypt, the flesh pots of the mental health system, to help lead them away from there, to liberate them from that. So, however, that takes courage too. And all the dramas and all the vicissitudes of life that we've seen through the past few years with what could happen, how an entire world populace could be cowed, and manipulated through their egoistic fears and the fear of reality, fear of death, absolutely. The psychomoralism will be leading the way against that and helping, liberate people from those fears and thus from manipulation as well. But that means we're going to be on the front lines. It's a drama. It's a battle. It's good and evil. This is the battle for the soul of humanity, really. And so the clinicians need to go through the process, and they need to build as well a community of scholars with each other. And, as we go through the process, a community of practitioners with each other, and a community, brothers and sisters with each other. So we need each other. It's very hard, and that's one of the things that I think I hope with Institute of Psychoanalytics. And I've been doing this by myself all along. Having to fly under the radar in a hostile environment. All the way from grad school all the way through those internships in hospitals, all this stuff. And these are not good places, but by the grace of God and little holy water thrown around here and there, strategically, we made it through. But it's so now that we're in this process, the need for this, to have other clinicians, it's again, we need to support each other and build this up. And that community of clinicians, it's a lifelong thing. And then the hope is, and I would say that we would hope that this would be able to be available to everybody, throughout the world as an alternative to the mental health system. And that's from the entire spectrum of mental health we're going to help deals with. And when it comes to what they call mental disorders, and that's going to be, depression or psychosis, schizophrenia, that kind of thing. So hopefully as well, we're going to develop then, we'll have in the training program, because in order to train and also in order to really serve population out there that is very desirous of this, needy of it, is they need to have an inpatient training facility, center, retreat center, really. It's not really, inpatient sounds bad. It's not really that. It's really what it is. That's community too. That's community of the practitioners. Some in training, some already trained, but and those that are there, the therapists. It's all a community. We're all in the same process. So it's let me just as a side note, this is something that's very sorely needed. That kind of a center, retreat center, because the alternative is, for instance, if you have a son, a young man, he has a psychotic break, oftentimes maybe at 16, 17, 18, maybe sometimes suicide, what have you. This can come from, every single family, any family out there. And it's the only alternative you have is going to be to have them hospitalized and be put on medication. And basically it's a chemical straitjacket. And, it's a horrendous thing. It's to have that kind of thing happen in one's family, how scary. But then the mental health system says, well, see, it's okay. It's just coming from a balance. Don't worry about it. And so the parents want to that's okay. It's okay. That's all it is. He's just like some sort of other disease he has. And so they they want to accept that fact. That makes all the guilt, off you, and you don't feel, how do you screw up? And really, I'm not saying they're culpable, but God, we still got wonder, how did we screw up? How did we do this? Why, and why did we screw up? And we thought, and so you have to examine it. But the mental health system, no. See, the mental health system says, you go there, you got the doctor's there, you've been worried. He said, no, he's diagnosed with this. Yeah, he's schizophrenic, and that's just something in the brain, the way it works. And he just has to be on medication, and he'll be okay. As long as he takes his medication. And so then he's on a chemical straight track for the rest of his life. And as you progress with those kind of medications, especially the antipsychotics, it really does do damage to neurologically. You become very, very dependent, and you become ingrained really, and that's schizophrenia, the psychotic type thing. You can't. It's really hard to get out of it because it exacerbates the symptomology. But again, offering it again the urgency, like to young people that have not yet been on a long course of medication like that, they can come and they can actually be able to, escape the mental health system. By the grace of God and the science of psychoanalytics, live lives that are free from any sort of psychotic breaks. And it's so that's what we really want to see, that and those kind of made possible throughout the world. And it's so we'll start with this, and hopefully Institute of Psychoanalytics, we're going to start with that program here in the next year or two. Have residential programs available. And again, nothing. It's really not clinical. It's really much more of a call to this human flourishing that we all are called to. And again, sometimes it's just paradoxical that those that maybe have certain debilitations in that regard are called to some of the deepest human flourishing. So that's what we look forward to.
And as you said earlier, what we're doing here, Psychomoralytics, the Institute of Psychomoralytics, it's students, it's disciples, it's a real community, which is what the whole thing is surrounded by. The last question I'll ask, Doc, is if you could speak to anybody who's, and like you said, this isn't for everybody. Not everybody needs to be a psychomoralist. Not everybody needs to get psychomoralytic help in the form of therapy and whatnot. But for anybody who maybe they have that background, maybe they're interested, maybe they want to get out of the mental health system. What would you say to anybody who's interested, who's on the fence? Because like I said, this starts September 4th is the first day of the semester. We've got a good group so far, and there's a couple spots left. And I just want you to, the last question I'll ask is talk to somebody who's on the fence, who's thinking about this. Why might this be something good for somebody who has that background? Take it away, yeah.
Psychoanalytics is a true science. It's explicated thoroughly in psychoanalytics and even on and modern psychotherapy. So it's fully explicated, and it has complete validity because of its integrated truths. It can't be refuted from a Thomistic or even a hylomorphic anthropological position. So so much in psychoanalysis is essential then to how you treat a person regardless. Now, a lot of clinicians out there are good at treating people and they bring their own talent to it, but they're effective in spite of their conceptualization, in spite of the system. And that's why they're not replicable. See, that's them. That's their talents. But this, we can all learn it, then bring our talents to it. And the conceptualization facilitates those talents and vice versa. So the need to have, if you're thinking about practicing in the mental health system or in that realm, it is a no-brainer. It's clearly that you should go to psychoanalytics. If it was all about science and paper, and that's where the validity was, that's where the impetus was. But that's not, because oftentimes people want to get into the professions. Because why? It's a power curve. It's a power curve. It's prestige, and it's you're in that system. When you're in the system, then you got some clout. Of course, that means they pay the piper. Yeah, in crowd is great, but
We provide some clout
you have
here at the Institute of Psychomoralytics, though, don't we? That's part of the.
we have some clout. We have well, you want to come up and meet us face to face. We have some clout. Yeah. Well, we shout out to anybody from the APA.
We'll host a conference.
Hey, team.
Yeah, we'll host a conference. We'll invite all the psychologists and psychiatrists from the APA. We'll wrap up there.
In fact, since I have some of a profile of them, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. We'll wrap up there. I'm gonna provide a link when we post this. There will be a link to the training page that has all the information about the Institute of Psychomoralytics, about our first semester. Just email in and we'll get you take a look at your resume and get you set up if that's something that that works out. But that link will be there beneath the video, so be sure to check that out if you're interested. That's all we have for the podcast. So Doc, thanks for being here. Thanks for giving us your insights.
Thank you, Trey. Peace.